Well, hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. And where we are is we're actually at BALLYCOPELAND Windmill, which is just outside MILLISLE. And we're going to get a wee tour here, and the tour guide's going to introduce herself here to us.
Welcome everybody to BALLYCOPELAND Windmill. My name is Lizzie and I'm your tour guide today. Now, location is everything. Why do you think this is a good, I'm actually going to ask the wee boy this. Why do you think it's a good place to build a windmill?
Why do you think, Jack?
Windy, exactly. It's windy, and you know, it's always windy here, and even if it's not windy here, it's always windy up at the windmill. And the southeast prevailing winds that come across over the sea, and they're fairly constant, so this is a really good place to build a windmill. And there's a couple of other good reasons why there's a windmill here. East Down, the area we're in, is one of the best rainwater areas in the whole of Ireland. And they had the ports of Donaghadee and MILLISLE, and that's where it would be very easy to export the grain. So, also, this windmill's quite unique for a few reasons. One, it's the only working windmill in the whole of Northern Ireland. Well, so I was told, but apparently I've been lying. Because we were supposed to have it working a few weeks ago for the celebration of a year being reopened. And then the engineers said it wouldn't work. So there's a few engineers were here yesterday because they turned it one quarter, because they turn it a quarter every few months to get the rain off. But they said there's a couple of things, they're not big things, but the powers of being the state monument, which it comes under, or the Department of Communities, is getting them to actually say yes, go ahead.
And is it true that this area was known as Little Holland because there were so many windmills?
That's right, that was just about to come in a second. So in 1834, the Ordnance Survey now, there was over 200 mills in County Down. Most of them would have been built on drumlins, little hills, which are drumlins, were formed at the end of the Ice Age. The ice was melting, and rain was everywhere. And so if you go around County Down, you'll see on top of lots of drumlins remains of stumps of windmills, which are now preserved actually. But there were so many, so there's over 200 mills, that was water mills and windmills in County Down, but there was also on the Ards Peninsula itself, there were over 100 windmills, and there were so many windmills it was right as Little Holland. And there were no water mills on the Ards Peninsula. Do you know why? Very simple reason. No water mills. It's because there's no rivers on the Ards Peninsula. So therefore there's no water mills, only windmills. And MILLISLE is Ulster Scots for Meadow of the Mill. And BALLYCOPELAND comes from the word Bally is townland of, so, and there's over 64,000 townlands in the whole of Ireland. But Copeland comes from the name de Copeland, who were a family that came over in Norman times, the 12th century, and settled in this area. But the Copeland Islands actually don't come from de Copeland name, they come from a Strangford word, Copman or something like that actually, previously.
Would you know where that family's buried? Would you?
The Copeland family, I don't actually,
No.
I need to find that out.
No worries.
Remind me to write, I write questions down in my wee book, I'll find out that actually. Now this windmill was built in 1813 by a man called George Bennett. And George Bennett, he actually designed the windmill so one man could run it by himself. I'll explain more about him later. But in 1915 the windmill ceased working, and it was in a bad state of repair actually by 1937. It was passed to state care. So 1915 it ceased working, 1937 it went to state care, and it was in a bad state. You'll see some photographs. And in the 30s and the 50s they did various repairs on it, and then in 1978 they actually got it back to full restorative order. In the 80s they chopped off 2 meters off each of the sails, because the sails used to come down right to the ground, and now they come over the door. So that was for health and safety purposes. Then the present project was started in 2015. It got delayed in which case this is the cafe, the car park, the whole cottages and everything. It got delayed because of lockdown, so we opened exactly, more just June a year ago. 7 million was spent on restoring it. 1.2 million came from the Department of Communities and 500,000 from Diera. We have made it one day. UCell now manages the actual cafe, and UCell is a social enterprise which encourages and supports the employment of people with disabilities, whether that's health, mental, disabilities. So they have about 6 cafes in total. With that, before we go inside, I'm just going to point the window out again. Because when you're up there, you're going to be craning your neck, so it's easier to see it from here. You see there's the big sail the far side, and then this side there's a little fantail. So the fantail, it's got 8 paddles on it. I'm going to explain how that works when we get up there, but you will actually be craning your neck a bit when you get up there to see it. So you can look in from here. Okay, and with that we're going to head into the Hillsman's house and learn a bit about the history of milling. So if we come up this direction, okay, so we are in what would have been the Kilmsman's house. This was actually quite a big house, but he probably lived upstairs and he probably had his farm machinery and his animals downstairs. And as we go out, you'll see there's an animal trough the far side. Now we're going to head back, first of all, 6,000 years. So 6,000 years ago, man stopped being a hunter and gatherer and started settling and doing agriculture. And he realised that actually when they grew crops, they couldn't actually eat the outside of the hard bit of the crop. They needed to grind it down and get the inside of the crop out. So initially how they would have done it, three boys, anybody come up here and you can have a go. See, this is what's known as a saddle cone. They literally rubbed stones together. Do you want to have a go? Anybody else, do you want to go? You're going to have a go. Come on up. There's 2 of them, but you're going to have one up there as well. That's what's known as a saddle cone. Just rubbing it and trying to make some flour. You might be there a while. Do you want to have a go on this one? I think they might be. It will be a while before we get enough for a loaf of bread. Have you made any flour yet?
Is it white or brown bread?
It looks white to me. Anyway, that was quite laborious, to be honest. So we move on a while to pre-Christian times, around about 500 BC. Why it took them so long, I've absolutely no idea. But anyway, they got a little bit more savvy, and this is what's known as a rotary quern. And it's got a bedding stone that stays still and a runner stone on top. Now, if I put some grain in here, this is a lot more efficient. Here we go, and I'll put some down in here as well. So, have a wee go. Do you want a wee go and turn? Give me your muscles, John. Yeah, and you'll see, as you get going, you'll see flour will be coming out of the side. You'll see it coming out. You can see it actually. You've got a load of muscle. That's brilliant. You're doing well.
Only you're an expert at that.
So this is actually where the expression from the daily grind comes from. And also having a millstone around your neck. I mean, it still was quite laborious. And if you look at the picture here, these children do not look too happy that this is what they're going to be doing for the rest of the day. Yeah, so, but this is basically the same principle how the millstones work up in the mill. It would have a bedding stone and a runner stone on top. But they will be the size of those 2 pictures there. The upper stone of each of the millstones is Cullen stone, which comes from the Rhine Valley in Germany. It's either called Cullen stone or could be called Amsterdam stone because it came up the Rhine through Amsterdam and then it would come by sea all the way up to here. It's the easiest way to get it here. The lower stone is called, but actually the reason I think it's called Cullen stone, it actually in Germany is known as Cologne stone. I reckon the Irish just couldn't say Cologne properly. It's Cologne. And the French burstone comes from a quarry that would have been north of Paris, which is where yours is used today. And the French burstone, you see, when we go up, you'll be able to see, they used to dress it, or like engrave it. They'd have a dresser, a stone dresser would come and basically dress or engrave furrows in the burstone. And depending on whether it was doing oat or wheat or whatever the stone was doing, it was dependent how it was dressed, the best way to grind it down. So anyway, so time moves on and agriculture grows and they need to find ways to mechanise rather than do the daily grind. At the end of the 18th century, legislation came in to encourage grain growing. And that's when mills popped up, water and windmills popped up all over the place. The first watermills came before windmills. We have there's evidence of watermills go back to Roman times in Europe. The first windmill evidence in British Isles we've got is 12th century, but we don't have evidence of a windmill in Ireland until the 17th century. But this particular windmill was built by George Bennett in 1813, and we know George Bennett borrowed £200 from, I think it was the de Lashroy family who live in Malala.
I've actually done a number of videos on those, and they're a big. There's a place in Lisburn near where my brother lives and his wife, and it's called they call it the Lashers Avenue, but it's not the Lashers.
It's the Lashroy.
Yeah, the Lashroy. But he actually, two of their sons fought in the Battle of the Boyne.
Yeah.
One of them distinguished himself at the Battle of the Boyne, and the other one he married into the Cremellin family, who were big linen people. It's believed that King William actually appointed Lewis Cremellin over the linen trade in Lisnagarby, or Lisburn as it's known today. So now the big house is still owned by that family in Donegal.
Oh, it is, yes.
The manor house.
The family's now called Day.
Yeah, and the cafe, is believed to have been where the gardener lived.
Yes.
And so the garden's still out the back, which belonged to the house. So well worth a visit, and also a wee cappuccino and a tray bake.
Okay, well that's worth knowing.
You can sit out in the garden too.
That's right.
Yes.
Hi. You looking for a tour?
No, I was just being nosy.
No, I've lost my trail.
I've lost your trail. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Anyway, we know he had this loan. There was actually an indecision, a confusion of when this mill was built originally, but we now know it was built in 1813 because there was another Ballycopeland windmill near Malala, and that was built a little bit earlier, around about 1790. So there was a confusion of when it was built because George Bennett actually, on the census of the 1815 census, he was a miller. But the previous census he was a farmer. So, but it was 1813. But then he sold it in 1845 to a James Magilton. And the Magilton family then owned and ran the windmill for the next 100 years, 3 generations. The next generation, Thomas Magilton, he married Mary Ann Fulton. And my understanding, she was the granddaughter of George Bennett. As in, everybody in Northern Ireland marries everybody else. Everybody's related. Thomas and Mary Ann, they had 5 strapping lads. And they all lived in the miller's cottage together. Samuel, there's a better picture of him in the miller's cottage, but this is the picture here of him. It's really him we owe it to that the windmill survived. In 1915, when it ceased working, he stayed on here as a caretaker, but in 1937, it was him who gave it to state care. So, but they owned 2 other windmills, the Magilton family. They owned Ballyhome and Ballyhalbert. Ballyhome was destroyed by fire in the 20s, and Ballyhalbert went into disrepair in the 40s, but Ballyhome now has been made into a house. And in fact, I had the architect the other day, just within this last month, who came here, who done Ballyhome windmill. And I've just discovered on Property Pal, for 500,000, there's a windmill for sale as a house in Clinchy. So I want to go and have a look. Anyway, so we're going to go around this way. I'm going to pretend that we're looking for the sister or something. I don't know. Because she's looking to move back to Northern Ireland, but she doesn't want to live in the windmill. So, now, just a bit of a demonstration of how the sails work. Now, do you know there's the 4 sails, and each of the sails have 13 windows on them. So at the moment, when you looked up at the windmill, the sails are all unfurled or reefed in. When they want to catch the wind, you can unfurl them or unreef them. It actually, they use sailing terms because we're using the wind, just the same as sailing. And this can be operated while the sail is turning. So say the wind gets too strong, they can have them half furled. And that will also depend how much power they need, if they're using 1, 2 or 3 millstones as well, and how powerful the wind was that day. They were canvas, now they're terraline. But this system is known as the Hooper Roller Reefing System, which is a bit of a tongue twister. But it was designed in 1789 by a Captain Stephen Hooper, who was a sea captain from the northeast of England. And BALLYCOPELAND windmill is the only place in the world that still uses the Hooper Roller Reefing System. So this makes it very important in industrial heritage, actually. So there you go.
So what we're going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is we're just going to cut the wee video off here. So this will be part 1. And so I hope you join us for part 2. God bless.